They thought I was finished. They thought old age had stripped me of my teeth, my pride, my fight. To them, I was just another tired man, counting the days until someone shoved me into a nursing home. But what they didn't know, what they could never imagine, was that I had spent 40 years building strength they couldn't see. And now, they'd forced me to use it against my own blood. It all started the week I finally retired. 40 years of factory shifts, grease under my nails, aching bones, and the constant grind of alarms before sunrise. It was over. I walked through that front door lighter than I'd ever felt in my life. I expected warmth, a smile, maybe even a toast with the cheap wine we kept hidden for special occasions. Instead, the kitchen went silent. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. Christopher dropped his fork. It clattered against the chipped plate like a warning shot. Lily's eyes widened, then narrowed, her mouth twisting into a smirk she didn't bother to hide. I did it. I told them, my grin wide, my chest proud. Today was my last day. 40 years of work, and I'm finally done. The silence stretched across the table like a noose. I waited for congratulations, for pride, maybe even a simple "good job, Dad." Instead, Christopher's face turned red. His jaw clenched. "What? You quit?" I blinked. "Quit? No, son. I retired. Earned it, every damn day of it. Earned it." His laugh was sharp, bitter. "You think that means you get to sit around now? On my paycheck? You expect me to feed you like some stray mutt?" The words hit me harder than steel on flesh. I stared at him, at the boy I'd raised into a man, and for the first time, I didn't recognize him. "Chris," I started, but Lily's voice cut me off, cold as glass. "He's right, Douglas. You can still work. My neighbor's father is 73 and bags groceries just fine. You're 65, not 90. No excuses." The meatloaf on my plate, my favorite dish, turned tasteless in my mouth. My chest burned with something I hadn't felt in years. Shame, not for myself, but for them. I swallowed hard. 40 years, and this is what I get. I thought we'd celebrate. Celebrate. Christopher leaned forward, his manager voice dripping with disdain. "Here's what we'll celebrate. Tomorrow, you start working again. Janitor, cleaner, whatever. Honest work, Dad. Because in this house, no one lives for free." His words were final. A judgment. I forced a smile, though inside I felt my hands tremble with a cold fire. "If that's what you want." Dinner ended. They left me alone at the table, their laughter echoing from the living room as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't gutted me in 10 minutes flat. Later, in the back room they called my space, I sat on the edge of the bed. The walls were thin, too thin, and through them, I heard every word they said. "Can you believe him?" Christopher scoffed. "Just announces he's retired, like we're supposed to throw him a party." Lily's laugh followed, cruel and low. "We'll give him a week. If he doesn't find work, we take his pension and put him in a nursing home. Deadweight doesn't get a free ride." Christopher chuckled. "Perfect. Beggars can't be choosers." The words slid into me like knives. I gripped the bedsheet until it tore under my fists. My own son. The boy I had stayed up nights working double shifts for. The man whose wedding I had paid for. The one who lived in a house that my sweat and savings had bought. Plotting my exile like I was garbage to be taken to the curb. They thought I was weak. They thought I was finished. They mistook kindness for weakness, sacrifice for stupidity. But I was listening. And I was planning. As the house settled into silence, I lay on that narrow bed staring at the ceiling, my blood running colder with every replay of their laughter. I thought about the long nights in the factory, the coins I saved while skipping meals so Christopher could have his textbooks. I thought about the wedding dress Lily wore, paid for with money I'd pulled from my own retirement savings. And I thought about how easily, how shamelessly, they had decided to discard me. Sleep never came, but something else did. A decision. They wanted to treat me like a burden, like a beggar at their table? Fine. Let them think that. Let them believe they'd won. Because while they whispered about deadlines and nursing homes, I was already writing a different script, one where the so-called dead weight reminded them who carried the load all along. By the time the first light cut through the blinds, I wasn't the broken man they thought they'd beaten. I was something else. Patient, cold, ready. And Christopher was about to learn that the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one with power today. It's the one you underestimated yesterday. Morning came like nothing had changed. The birds outside chirped. The smell of Lily's burnt toast wafted through the hallway. Christopher's heavy footsteps thundered across the kitchen tile. But inside me, something was different. I moved slow, deliberate, like a man beaten down. Let them think that. Let them see a tired old fool in a faded shirt, sipping his coffee with shaky hands. They wanted weakness? I'd hand it to them on a silver platter. Christopher cleared his throat when I entered the kitchen. He had that smug look plastered across his face, the kind he used when he was pretending to be the man of the house. "Morning, Dad," he said, the fake cheer sharp enough to cut. "Sleep well." As well as I could, I muttered, keeping my voice small. Lily placed a plate in front of me, 2 slices of toast, no butter, like she was rationing supplies for a refugee. "Eat quick. Chris has something to tell you." Christopher leaned against the counter, coffee mug in hand. He cleared his throat like a boss calling a meeting. "I talked to Leonard at work. There's an opening for a janitor at Whitmore Industries. Low pay, but it's honest work. You start Monday at 7 a.m. sharp." I kept my eyes down, letting the silence stretch. "Finally," I said, "thank you, son. I'll be there." Christopher smirked. Lily clapped her hands lightly. "See? That wasn't so hard." I nodded, chewing the dry toast, pretending to swallow my pride. What I was really swallowing was rage. Rage and something sharper, plans. They thought they'd shove me into a corner. But what they didn't know was that I'd built Whitmore Industries with my own 2 hands. 25 years ago, when Leonard was just a dreamer in his garage, I invested $500,000 in his idea. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I believed in him. And now, Christopher's entire career sat on the shoulders of the very man he was trying to humiliate. The irony was almost sweet. That night, I went to my room and closed the door. My desk drawer slid open with a quiet rasp, revealing 2 folders I'd kept hidden for years. One held investment documents, proof of my stake in Whitmore. The other held something darker. Notes. Records. Evidence I'd started gathering 2 months ago when I first noticed Lily's carelessness. Receipts she left on the counter. Expense reports she forgot to hide. At first I ignored them, chalked it up to sloppy bookkeeping. But the numbers didn't add up. She was stealing from her company. Small amounts, precise enough to stay hidden, but theft all the same. And now, thanks to Christopher's arrogance, she'd handed me the perfect weapon. The following day, while Christopher was at work and Lily ran her errands, I took my time, opened her office bag, photographed the papers she carelessly stuffed inside. Each shot was crisp, time-stamped, undeniable. When I was done, I slid everything back in place. She'd never know. That evening, she came home flustered, muttering about work deadlines. Christopher didn't notice. He was too busy barking at me about responsibility and second chances. I nodded along, smiling at the performance. Inside, I was already steps ahead. Phase 1 was simple. Let them believe I'd surrendered. Let Christopher preen like he'd put his old man in his place. Let Lily smirk, thinking she was clever. Phase 2 would come later. Much later. And it would sting. But before the big strike, I wanted to see how far they'd go. So Monday morning, instead of showing up at Whitmore Industries in the faded janitor's uniform they'd bought me, I stayed home. Made myself a proper breakfast. Eggs, bacon, coffee strong enough to burn. I savored every bite while the sun climbed higher. At exactly 8:15, my phone rang. Christopher's voice exploded through the speaker. "Dad, where the hell are you?" I sipped my coffee slowly. "Morning, son. What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" "Leonard was waiting for you. You embarrassed me in front of my boss." Do you have any idea what you've done? I let the silence hang, then said softly, I must have forgotten. These old brains aren't what they used to be. Don't you dare play the senile card. His voice cracked with fury. I vouch for you. I told Leonard you'd be reliable. Now I look like a fool. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. I kept my voice calm, almost apologetic. I'll be there tomorrow. Bright and early. You'd better, he hissed, before slamming the line dead. I set the phone down, a smile creeping across my face. Phase 1 complete. His reputation cracked. That night, as they sulked in the living room, I sat in my room going over Lily's stolen files. Line after line, invoice after invoice, all of it damning. I knew exactly what I had to do next. The clock read 11:42 p.m. when I finished drafting the email. Anonymous, direct, armed with attachments that showed Lily's theft in black and white. I hovered over the send button, my finger steady. Once I clicked, her world would collapse. Christopher's smug little kingdom would crumble with it. I thought about their laughter through the wall, about the words dead weight, about the nursing home. And then I pressed send. The message disappeared into cyberspace. The trap was set. By morning, the first domino would fall. The first crack showed at 6:47 p.m. The next day, the sound of the front door slamming, heels clicking fast on the hardwood, breath ragged, sharp. I folded my newspaper and looked up just in time to see Lily stumble into the living room. Her face was pale, eyes bloodshot, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She clutched her purse like it was a lifeline. Lily, I asked, keeping my voice calm, steady. What happened? She dropped into the armchair opposite me, shaking her head. They suspended me, she whispered. Pending investigation. Christopher appeared a moment later, briefcase in hand, already loosening his tie. What's going on? Lily's voice cracked. Someone sent Mr. Henderson documents. Real documents. They think I've been stealing. I let my brows knit together in practiced confusion. Stealing? You? Yes. She burst out, then buried her face in her hands. They have invoices, receipts, even photos of my files. Everything. Christopher froze. His face drained of color, then turned scarlet. What? Who the hell would do that? I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. Sounds serious, I muttered. If the evidence is that detailed. Shut up, Dad. Christopher snapped, whirling on me. You don't know anything about this. I met his glare with a flat stare, letting him see nothing but calm. Inside, though, I was smiling. The second domino had fallen, exactly on schedule. Lily sobbed louder. Doug, they had everything. 8 months of reports, side by side with the real numbers. They're bringing in auditors. They said it's airtight. Christopher dropped into a chair, running both hands through his hair. This can't be happening. Not now. Not when we're all ready. He cut himself off, glancing at me, then back at Lily. Already what? I asked softly. Nothing. Christopher barked. He stood up again, pacing the room like a caged animal. It has to be someone at the office. A jealous coworker. Somebody with access. But I saw the flicker in Lily's eyes. Doubt. Fear. She knew what I knew. This wasn't random. Someone had been watching closely. Too closely. She glanced at me, just for a second, then looked away. Perfect. Let suspicion rot them from the inside. Later that night, their voices carried through the thin wall again. Only this time there was no laughter. You have to fix this, Lily hissed. How the hell am I supposed to fix it? Christopher shot back. Henderson has auditors crawling all over the place. Do you realize what happens if they press charges? You'll lose your job, your license. We'll lose everything. Lily's voice broke. What about your father? What if he? Christopher cut her off with a roar. Don't talk about him right now. I smiled in the darkness. Good. Let them argue. Let them tear each other apart while I sat silent, the ghost they underestimated. The next morning, Christopher stormed into the kitchen while I was sipping coffee. His eyes were wild, his jaw tight. Dad, you're coming with me today? I raised an eyebrow. To Whitmore. Yes. No excuses this time. No forgetting the time. You're showing up, you're working, and you're making me look good in front of Leonard. You understand? His voice shook as he said it. The cracks were spreading. His career on one side, his marriage on the other, both crumbling. I nodded slowly. Of course, son. Today will be different. Something in my tone made him pause. He studied me, suspicion flickering in his eyes. But then he nodded, muttering, "Good. Don't screw this up." As he walked away, I turned the mug in my hand, watching the coffee swirl like dark water. Different, indeed. By the time he realized just how different, it would already be too late. Because Lily's fall was only the beginning. The real collapse was coming, and I was going to be the one pulling every string. The ride to Whitmore Industries was silent. Christopher's hands strangled the steering wheel, knuckles white, jaw tight. Every so often he shot me a glance, like he was daring me to screw up again. I sat quiet in the passenger seat, dressed in the janitor's uniform he'd shoved at me last night. Cheap gray pants, a shirt that smelled of plastic packaging, and shoes half a size too small. A costume. That's all it was. Let me make one thing clear, Christopher said finally, his voice sharp, rehearsed. No mistakes today. No senior moments. You'll show up, mop floors, empty trash, whatever they tell you. You'll work. You'll keep your mouth shut. And you'll make me look good. Got it? I turned my head slowly, met his eyes, and said, I understand, son. He smirked like he'd won something. When we pulled into the parking lot, I felt the weight of it hit me. 25 years. From Leonard's garage to this glass and steel tower. I'd been here before, though not as a janitor. As a partner. As the man who'd written the first check that made this empire possible. Christopher strode through the front doors like he owned the place. He didn't. I followed, mop and bucket in hand, playing the part of the beaten-down old man. Employees bustled past, eyes on their coffee cups, their phones, their deadlines. A few gave me pitying looks. I kept my head low. Then I saw him. Leonard Whitmore, silver hair combed back, sharp suit, tablet in hand. He moved through the corridor with the steady confidence of a man who'd built something that mattered. Mr. Whitmore, Christopher called, puffing up his chest. Perfect timing. Leonard glanced up. His eyes slid over me, then snapped back. He stopped dead. Christopher, Leonard said slowly. Who's this? Christopher grinned, oblivious. This is the solution I told you about. My father, your new janitor. The words hung in the air like poison. A few employees nearby actually stopped walking, curiosity pulling them in. Leonard blinked. Then his expression hardened. His voice dropped, cold and sharp. Excuse me. Christopher's grin faltered. My father. He needed work. I thought it'd be perfect. Leonard's jaw tightened. His eyes burned holes through Christopher. Then, slowly, he turned his gaze on me. Douglas, he said, his voice low, steady. What the hell is this? The corridor froze. Christopher looked between us, confused. Wait, you know him? Leonard's laugh was bitter, humorless. Know him? Christopher, your father isn't a janitor. He isn't looking for handouts. He's my business partner. Without him, there wouldn't be a Whitmore Industries. Without him, you wouldn't even have a job to lose. The blood drained from Christopher's face so fast I thought he might collapse. No, that's impossible. He worked factory shifts his whole life. He never. Leonard's voice cut through him like a blade. 25 years ago, your father invested $500,000 into this company when it was nothing but a garage and a dream. He owns 37% of this business. And you brought him here, in a janitor's uniform. The silence that followed was brutal. People stared. Some whispered. Christopher stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Finally, Leonard snapped. You're finished here. Pack your things. Security will escort you out. Christopher staggered back, shaking his head. No. Wait, Mr. Whitmore, please. I didn't know. That's your problem, Christopher. You didn't care to know. Now get out. The words echoed down the corridor, final and merciless. Christopher turned to me then, eyes wild, desperation leaking through his cracks. Dad, why didn't you tell me? I straightened, dropping the mop, letting the false posture fall away. My voice was calm, cold, because I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become without the shadow of my money. And now I know. His lips trembled. His eyes searched mine for mercy. There was none. Leonard gestured to security. Get him out of my sight. Christopher's briefcase slipped from his hand, papers spilling across the marble floor as they led him away. His world collapsing, piece by piece, while mine rose back to its full height. Leonard turned to me then, his voice softening. Douglas, my friend, why didn't you say something sooner? I gave him a small smile. Sometimes the truth speaks loudest when it comes at the right moment. He nodded slowly, respect clear in his eyes. But this wasn't finished. Not yet. Christopher had been humiliated, his career destroyed, but his wife still had cards on the table, and I intended to flip them all, one by one, until there was nothing left. Christopher didn't come home that night. When I asked Lily where he was, she snapped, out, and slammed the bedroom door. Her face was red, her voice raw. She looked less like the polished woman I once knew and more like a cornered animal, fighting shadows she couldn't see. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea, letting the silence wrap around me. The house felt different now. Smaller, colder. Christopher's absence left a vacuum, and in it, Lily's nerves rattled loud. At 9:13 p.m., her phone rang. She rushed to answer in the hallway, but the walls in this house were thin. Yes, Mr. Henderson, I understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. I'll cooperate fully. Yes, I'll bring all documentation tomorrow, of course. Thank you for the chance. When she hung up, she stayed in the hallway a full minute, breathing hard. Then she stormed into the kitchen, catching sight of me with my tea. What? She barked. Nothing, I said evenly. Just wondering how work is going. Her eyes narrowed. For a second, just a second, I saw the suspicion flicker, like maybe she knew. Maybe she guessed I was the ghost in her machine. But she said nothing. She just grabbed a bottle of wine, poured herself half a glass in one gulp, and went back upstairs. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. The next morning, she left early. Her heels clacked fast down the driveway. She didn't say a word to me. I waited. By 3:22 p.m., the storm arrived. The front door burst open, and Lily staggered in, pale and shaking. Her hands fumbled with her purse, scattering papers across the floor. They know, she gasped, falling into a chair. They've got everything. Invoices, receipts, vendor statements. Henderson said the auditors confirmed it all. Every penny. I tilted my head, keeping my voice calm. That sounds serious. Her eyes snapped to mine, red and wild. Don't you dare sit there looking smug, Douglas. You think I don't notice? You, sitting quiet while everything falls apart around me. I leaned back slowly. I think actions have consequences. That's all. She stared at me like she wanted to lunge across the table. But she didn't. She just buried her face in her hands and began to sob. At 5:11, Christopher came stomping in, his face pale, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He didn't even look at me. He went straight to Lily. What happened? They suspended me, she choked. Pending termination. They might press charges. Christopher froze. His jaw worked, but no words came. Finally he spun, his eyes locking on me like knives. You, he snarled. This is your fault. I raised my brows. How so? Don't play dumb with me. He slammed his fist on the table, rattling the empty wine glass. First you humiliate me in front of Leonard. Now Lily's life is ruined. Someone's out to get us, and the timing's too perfect. You're behind this. I know it. I let the silence drag out, then said softly, if I was behind it, don't you think I'd admit it by now? His face twisted with rage. You think this is funny? You're destroying everything I built. I stood slowly, meeting his glare with cold calm. No, Christopher, you destroyed it yourself. All I've done is sit here, drinking tea. He lunged at me then, his hand raised like he might actually strike. Lily caught his arm, sobbing. Chris, stop. It won't help. For a moment, his eyes burned into mine. Then his arm dropped. He stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I sat back down, poured myself another cup of tea, and let the moment settle. Phase 3 was complete. Christopher's career gone. Lily's job collapsing. Their marriage splintering. And I hadn't even played my last card yet. Later that night, I heard them through the wall again. But there was no laughter anymore. Only fury, blame, and fear. This is your fault, Christopher hissed. If you hadn't stolen. My fault. You're the one who brought him to Whitmore in a janitor's uniform. Don't you dare blame me for this. Their voices rose higher, sharper, until finally, silence. The heavy silence of two people realizing the ground beneath them was gone. I lay on my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, calm as still water. Because while they clawed at each other in the dark, I was already preparing the final strike. And when it landed, there would be nothing left standing. By Thursday, the whispers had begun. Not from me, from the world outside these walls. I caught the first glimpse at the corner store. Two women from the neighborhood stood near the canned soup aisle, speaking in voices low enough to be gossip, not conversation. Did you hear? That cook woman, Lily. They say she stole from her own company. Really? I knew she lived a little too fancy for her paycheck. They glanced at me then, their eyes sharp with curiosity. I smiled faintly, pushed my cart past them, and said nothing. By the time I returned home, I knew the seed had sprouted. Small-town gossip spreads faster than wildfire, and this town loved a scandal more than Sunday football. That evening, Christopher came storming into the house again, his face pale, sweat on his forehead. Dad, he barked, what did you say to them? I looked up from my chair. To whom? The neighbors. He threw his jacket down, his eyes wild. Everyone knows. Everyone's talking. Henderson's investigation hasn't even gone public yet, and somehow it's already all over town. I tilted my head. People talk, son. I don't control that. His jaw clenched, his fists balled. Lily came in behind him, her makeup smeared, her eyes puffy. They're whispering at the grocery store, the school moms, even at church. She slammed her purse onto the table. Do you understand what this means? They'll never look at us the same again. I set down my cup of tea, my tone calm. Maybe they're just seeing you for who you really are. Lily's face twisted. Christopher's eyes burned. But neither of them said a word. Because deep down, they knew I was right. That night, their arguing turned into shouting. Through the wall, I heard every word. You ruined us. Lily spat. First your father humiliates you. Now I've lost everything because you couldn't keep him under control. Me? Christopher roared back. You're the one who stole from your company. You think anyone's going to hire you now? Their voices broke into sobs, then silence. I lay in bed, staring at the shadows shifting across my ceiling. Every sound from their room was another nail in the coffin of their perfect little marriage. But I wasn't finished. The next day, I printed copies. Not many, just enough. Anonymous flyers slipped into mailboxes, pinned to bulletin boards at the diner, the laundromat, the post office. Each one showed the truth. Lily Cook under investigation for embezzlement. Christopher Cook fired from Whitmore Industries for incompetence. I didn't add commentary. Didn't need to. Facts alone were poison enough. By Saturday morning, the looks had changed. Neighbors crossed the street instead of waving. Cars slowed in front of the house. One man even spat on the sidewalk as he passed. When Christopher finally stepped outside to fetch the paper, someone shouted from across the street. Hey, Cook, how's it feel to be the family disgrace? He froze, face pale, before retreating back inside with the paper clutched like a shield. I watched from the window, silent, steady. Inside, the tension thickened. Meals were eaten in silence. Doors slammed often. Lily drank more. Christopher yelled more. Both of them avoided my eyes. By Sunday night, the storm finally broke. Christopher burst into the kitchen, his face blotchy, his voice raw. Enough games, Dad. Tell me the truth. Was it you? Did you do this to us? I looked up from my tea, let the silence stretch, then answered softly. What if I did? His mouth opened, then closed. He looked like a man teetering on the edge of a cliff, realizing the ground beneath him was already gone. You destroy your own family? He whispered, his voice shaking. I set my cup down gently. Family is supposed to protect each other, respect each other. But you? You called me dead weight. You planned to steal my pension. You laughed about throwing me into a nursing home. That's not family. That's betrayal. The words landed heavy. He staggered back, his face pale. Lily stood in the doorway, frozen, listening. And I could see it in their eyes. The dawning realization. They'd picked the wrong man to bury. By Monday morning, the cook name was dirt. Everywhere I went, I felt the stares. At the diner, people lowered their voices when I walked past. At the pharmacy, the cashier avoided eye contact, sliding my change across the counter like I was contagious. But it wasn't me they looked at with disgust. It was them, Christopher and Lily. The perfect couple was gone. In their place, a disgraced son and a fraudulent wife. When I came home that evening, I found Christopher hunched over the kitchen table, his head buried in his hands. Lily sat across from him with an empty glass, her eyes hollow, her shoulders sagging. The house reeked of stale wine and despair. Dad, Christopher croaked without looking up. We're ruined. I set my keys on the counter. So it seems. His head snapped up, eyes bloodshot, face twisted with rage and desperation. You don't even care, do you? You're enjoying this. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Enjoying? No. Watching the scales balance themselves? Maybe. Lily slammed her glass down, the sound sharp. What's wrong with you? You've sat here like some smug ghost while everything crumbles. Henderson, the neighbors, the whole town, everyone hates us now? I let my gaze move from her to Christopher, calm as stone. I told you once. Actions have consequences. You both made your choices. Now you're living with them. Christopher shot to his feet, chair scraping hard against the floor. You think you're better than us? You think you've won? I didn't move. I didn't blink. I don't think, son. I know. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Lily's shaky breath. Christopher's fists trembled at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might actually strike me. But then he turned, storming out of the kitchen, muttering curses under his breath. Lily sat there, staring into her empty glass, whispering, We can't stay here. Not like this. Everyone knows. We're finished. I turned and walked away, leaving her words to rot in the air behind me. That night, I prepared the final piece. In my drawer was a folder thicker than the rest. Records, receipts, proof of every dollar I'd funneled into Christopher's life. Tuition checks, wedding payments, the down payment on this house. Each page a reminder that their entire existence was built on my back. I spread them out on the bed like cards in a dealer's hand. Soon, the world would see the truth. Without me, Christopher was nothing. Without me, Lily was no one. Through the wall, their voices rose again. Maybe we should just leave, Lily said, her voice sharp, desperate. Sell the house, move somewhere no one knows us. And go where? Christopher snapped. With what money? We're broke, Lily. We've got nothing. There was a long pause. Then, in a quieter voice, she asked, What about your father's pension? My hands froze over the papers. Christopher's voice came next, low and bitter. We'll get it. One way or another. If you won't give it up, we'll take it. Lily didn't argue. She didn't even hesitate. And that told me everything I needed to know. The time for patience was over. They'd crossed their final line. By morning, the last card would fall. I stacked the papers neatly, slid them back into the folder, and placed it on the nightstand. Then I lay back, staring at the ceiling, my mind cold and clear. Tomorrow, they'd finally understand who Douglas Cook really was. Not a burden, not deadweight, not a man to be pushed aside, but the storm they never saw coming. And when it hit, there'd be nothing left of the world they thought they controlled. Morning sunlight spilled across the kitchen like nothing had changed. But everything had. I carried the folder under my arm and walked in slow, steady. Christopher sat slumped at the table, his hair wild, his face gray. Lily stood at the counter with her coffee, both hands shaking as she tried to lift the mug. Neither looked at me until I laid the folder down on the table with a quiet thud. Christopher frowned. "What's this?" 40 years, I said evenly. Every tuition check, every rent payment, every dollar I poured into your lives. Page after page, signed by my hand. Proof that without me, you'd have had nothing. He opened the folder with trembling hands. Each page hit him like a hammer. Oregon State tuition, $23,000. Wedding expenses, $8,000. Mortgage assistance, $36,000. He flipped faster, his eyes growing wider with each line. This can't be," his voice cracked. "You paid for everything?" Lily leaned closer, her face pale. "Chris, he's been bankrolling us for years." I nodded once. "And now, you're both standing here, plotting to steal what little you think I have left." Christopher's jaw clenched. His lips trembled, but the anger was gone. What remained was fear. "Dad, please, we didn't mean it like that." "You did," I cut in. My voice was cold steel. "I heard you through the walls. Both of you. 1 week to find work, or take my pension. Send me to a nursing home. Beggars can't be choosers. Isn't that what you said?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Lily dropped into a chair, covering her face with her hands. Christopher just sat there, staring at the folder like it was a coffin with his name on it. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "You thought I was powerless. You thought I was finished. But I am not a man who gets buried. I am the man holding the shovel." Their eyes snapped up to mine, and that's when I dropped the final card. "I've spoken with Leonard. Effective immediately, this house is no longer yours." Christopher's head jerked. "What?" "This deed," I continued, sliding another paper onto the table, "was in my name. Always has been. I let you believe it was yours. But after last week, I signed the transfer. Leonard's attorneys are handling the rest. You have until Friday to pack your things." Lily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You can't do this." "I already have," I said simply. Christopher's chair screeched back as he stood, face red, veins standing out on his neck. "You'd throw your own son out on the street." I stood too, eye to eye with him. "No, Christopher. You did that yourself. I just made it official." The fury in his eyes broke into something else. Defeat. The weight of a man who realized the ground beneath him had been ripped away. Lily whispered, "We'll have nothing." "Exactly," I said, turning for the door. "Nothing. The same way you wanted to leave me." I left them there, broken at the table, their whispers following me like the whimpers of a wounded animal. By the end of the week, they were gone. The house was quiet again. Mine again. I stood in the doorway that Friday evening, watching the sun sink behind the neighborhood, the air cool and clean. Somewhere down the block, Christopher's car disappeared around a corner, packed with boxes and regrets. I closed the door, the silence settling like peace for the first time in years. 40 years of sacrifice had ended in betrayal. But in the end, justice had been served. Not by shouting, not by fists, but by patience, by proof, by letting the truth crush them heavier than any hand ever could. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat at the kitchen table, and let the quiet fill the room. They had thought me old, weak, a burden, but they'd learned the truth too late. I wasn't the weight dragging them down. I was the anchor they could never escape. And now they'd sunk themselves. The last laugh wasn't loud. It was quiet, cold, final, because sometimes revenge doesn't need to roar. Sometimes it only needs to whisper. And my last whisper was simple: never underestimate your father. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means a lot, and there are many more stories waiting for you here.